So this next session is going to be about Nepal in the global stage. And moderating this session, we have Mr. Sujeev Shakya, who is Nepal's CEO, Chief Eternal Optimist. He's also a columnist with both Kantipur and the Kathmandu Post, and he's also the author of a book, the book Unleashing Nepal. So ladies and gentlemen, with a big round of applause, I'd like to request our moderator, Mr. Sujeev Shakya, to kindly join me on stage. And then I'd like to request our speakers, Honorable Ministers, Honorable Pradeep Gyawali, Minister for Foreign Affairs, and Honorable Dr. Yuba Khatiwada, Finance Minister, to kindly join us on stage as well. So I'll now hand over the proceedings to our moderator.
Thank you, Sadiksha. It's an honor and a privilege to be in conversation in this session, and this is going to be a 30-minute session. And given the paucity of time, we are not going to have questions from the floor, but as the app is on, I've taken some questions that are coming from the app, and I've noted them. Yesterday, Prime Minister KP Oli made a historic speech here, and perhaps for us, one of the most beautiful ones since he took over last year. It was music to our ears, that the emphasis was very clear. We need more investments, and foreign investments are welcome. I think that was the key messaging we have. And today we have two key ministers in his cabinet, Honorable Dr. Yuba Khatiwada and Honorable Pradeep K. Both of them were part of the delegation that went to the World Economic Forum in Davos recently. So today's conversations are going to be on looking forward, as we talk about unleashing Nepal's potential. We are not really here to criticize and to see what are the challenges. I think there are a lot is being talked about. A lot is being talked about what's going wrong. But we are here to look at how we can move forward and how we can recalibrate our economic growth story, and how we can talk about unleashing Nepal's potential. So without much ado, maybe I'll just start off, the discussion with their visit to Davos in January, and we had our Prime Minister and our delegation participate for the first time. Our Foreign Minister and Finance Minister was there, and perhaps this was one of the great times when Nepal was on the global center stage. So what has been sort of anecdotal stories, experiences of your visit? Maybe I'll start with Honorable Pradeep K.
Thank you, Sujeevji. Thank you for providing us this wonderful opportunity. And thank you to Kantipur Media Group for hosting this very important conclave, which will provide to bring the diverse opinions in one place and to extract the essence. It is, I think, a tradition of this region that we very much give importance to the discourses. Bade bade jayate tattva. It is a famous saying. So I wish every success of this conclave. The invitation to the Right Honorable Prime Minister K.P. Sharma Oli to Davos and the highest level delegation or representation in that forum is a manifestation of the changed context and growing profile of Nepal. Needn't to say, Sujeevji, Nepal went through a very difficult time during the conflict, and we lost more than 10 years to manage the conflict, to conclude the transition. Transition paved the way for the instability, policy inconsistency. That's why in external front we were unable to tap the potentials to cope up with the changed dynamics of the global economy and global polity. Against this background, our participation in Davos Forum was very important. That provided us an important opportunity to showcase the Nepal's desire and resolve to have a rapid socio-economic transformation, to attain the prosperity through the broader participation and the goodwill of the international community, and to share our own experiences on that regard. Some of high-level bilateral meetings, discussion with business sectors, CEOs of famous companies, that all created an environment to make a network for Nepal. And now our effort will be based upon that opportunity and the network to implement or to invite those business community to those circle to be a meaningful collaboration in Nepal's development. So I think our participation was very, very meaningful.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister Gyawali. Dr. Khatiwada, what was your impressions about Davos? I mean, it's a place where all the finance ministers, all the businesses come together. So what has been your, any anecdotal interesting experiences, would be useful. That's working.
Thank you, Sujeev ji. Also, let me join my cabinet colleague, Foreign Minister Pradeep Gyawali ji, for appreciating Kantipur Media House for initiating all this dialogue in a much more positive way and taking all of us together to the road of peace, development and welfare of Nepali people. So thank you once again. On the question of Davos, the meetings which our Prime Minister attended and spoke, our Foreign Minister has already mentioned some of them, that we were able to just showcase our development roadmap. And also the world which was curious of this government, because we are the government with hammer and sickle. So although we are elected democratically, people would be curious to know what kind of policies this government has. And we were able to show that we are elected government with full democratic practices. We do take along with the state, the players of the state like the private sector, the community and the cooperative sectors, and we do collectively the development work of the country in such a complementary way that we don't find ourselves to be outplaced to any other. So it's a kind of complementary and kind of collaborative approach we are following. I think we were able to give the message to the world that it is a kind of country where we have any kind of democratic deficit. That was the first point. The second point was how we were able to implement the federation, which Nepal is of course the youngest federal state. So we were there to also showcase how fast we were able to translate federalism into action. And it is in less than 1 year's time that we have been able to fix some of the problems associated with federalism, particularly on sharing resources and opportunities and responsibilities. That's the second. The third one, I think, is having our informal dialogue and also formal meetings with several investors to solicit their investment and their interest towards Nepal. On a personal note, I would like also to mention that some of the sessions were really, really interesting, and that caught my attention, in particular about measuring progress, activity, and welfare of the country. I can see a lot of debate going in this country, people talking about some of the numbers and talking that the economy is going down. The discussion that took place in Davos was more than GDP. It was beyond GDP, how to measure welfare, how to measure progress of a country. Here, GDP is doing very well, but it's not enough. That must translate into the proper welfare of the people. And how can we do that? So that session I found very interesting, and we have really to have our further discourse on measuring our progress and welfare through some other upscaled, or I would say even higher level of indicators other than GDP. That was interesting. One other session which was really interesting was on investment. The global investment trend is declining. That was not a very good news to all of us. But still the global economy was growing and is growing. So we wanted to know what are the causes behind this declining trade, investment, and also the economy, global economy keeping up. And my argument there was that maybe productivity of capital has gone up, efficiency might have gone up. So why do you need more investment if you are increasing the productivity of capital? So I think some of the interventions we could make there also had a lot of attention of the world that we should be looking beyond capital accumulation for growth. We must be looking into the productivity of all the inputs, including capital and labor we put in the process. I think this debate is, it keeps on going, but that was an interesting event. Thank you.
No, thank you. That is, I think it's very interesting for us to learn, because I think watching our Prime Minister live and in Davos, it was also a proud moment for us Nepalis. And we also wanted to hear some behind the stories on what happened and what you learned. Thank you very much. So I would come back to Minister Gyawali in terms of if foreign investment is what we have to seek, if that is what we have to look for in terms of going to events like Davos and seeking, sort of global attention. So that is one time, and there will be a lot of things that we can do. But what is it that we are going to change, or what is happening around some of the conversation we started having was on the economic diplomacy issues, and how would our, sort of foreign policy linked to investments, how would our own embassies go through transformation? Maybe some light on that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yes. The major component of our diplomatic conduct has now been shifted towards economic diplomacy, because for Nepal, our diplomatic engagements, our diplomatic activities should serve the national resolve, that is the prosperous Nepal and happy Nepali. To fulfill that aspiration, we need broader global support and goodwill. That's why our diplomatic activities should shifted towards that direction. That's why our ministry is trying its best to make new arrangements on that regard. Very recently, we have developed the country-specific profiles of major countries that will give us basic information, what are the expectations of with that particular country, and what are the potentials of the engagements with that country. So we have developed that type of country-specific profile. Second, I have already instructed our diplomats abroad to focus basically in 5 major areas. If they are serving in the developed countries, please try your best to increase the ODA, though it is not sufficient and its trend is declining. However, by 2020, when we are going to be graduated from the LDC status, and for some years, when we will be able to fulfill the reconstruction projects, reconstruction process, at least for the time being, we need ODA as well. But keeping in the mind that the trend is declining, our major focus is in foreign direct investment. I have already instructed our missions to establish a new profile, a new image of Nepal. What are the major components? Why anybody should invest in Nepal? What are the potentials? What are the opportunities? I have instructed them to at least focus on that regard, the demographic dividend, basically the youths in majority, with vigor, with hardworking nature and their honesty. Growing domestic market with 29 million people and increased size of the middle class. Third, located in the very attractive location among the largest market of India and China. Huge potentials, natural resources. these are the major enablers of our economic development. And I have instructed the missions to establish a new image, Nepal as an emerging, vibrant economic vibe. Third, tourism is one of the most important component of our economic development. And next year we are going to organize the Visit Nepal Year 2020 to fulfill those aspirations of the 2 million tourists. Our missions are engaged to branding Nepal. And fourth, Nepali diaspora is very, very important to be a partner of the Nepal's economic journey. So that's why we have established various platforms and mechanisms to engage them in Nepal's development. And fifth, our trade deficit is alarming. It's really challenging. And we are trying our best how we can reduce the deficit, how we can increase our export, how we can increase our products. That's why our missions are working on that regard, and we are trying our best to create a new image of Nepal as an attractive destination for investment.
No, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gyawali. I think it's very refreshing because in Nepal, it's very rare that we would have a foreign minister talking about economy. In Nepal, it's it is always seen as a finance ministry, sort of area, and it's good that because at the end of the day, it is about coordination, and this is really really great to hear this. And so, if we are looking for investments, and if we are pushing Nepal as an attractive investment destination, I think that's what the finance ministry is also looking at, rather than, as we said, not really emphasizing only on the summit, but to really look at sort of what are the sort of broad contours on where we are looking at changing the investment climate, because that's what is going to be key. And for all our embassies to go and say that come invest in Nepal, do something in Nepal, we need to bring about. It's not that the change is not happening, but I think the process is accelerating. We are looking forward to the investment summit too. So how do you see some of the core couple of areas that you're really pushing hard for? Mr. Khatiwada.
Thank you, Sujeev ji. Along with the political stability and new federal structure, which is working in the most democratic way to govern the investment structure and investors of the country, I would like to emphasize on several factors, but maybe due to time constraint, I would like to speak 4 or 5 of them. First, Nepal is an emerging country, emerging market. Also close to the neighboring big markets that our foreign minister has already mentioned. Only an emerging market has the greenfield investment opportunities. In a matured market, you don't get any such kind of greenfield investment opportunities. It could be a kind of brownfield or something others. So, first of all, right from startup to increasing capacity to doing big business, we have the virgin land. So this is the best thing we can offer. But having said that the investment opportunities are there, we have also to create enabling environment. The cost of doing business has to be reduced and the ease of doing business has to be further facilitated. What the investors need, the first thing they want their investment to get attractive return in a safe investment environment. I think if you look at the history of foreign investment in Nepal, most of them, I agree, and I think many of the investors should also agree that they are making good money out of the investment, and they are giving justice to the investors, the shareholders, after paying good tax also to the country and creating jobs and contributing to the exchequer through revenue. So this is already an evident case that if you invest in Nepal, you get good return on your money. And second, while investing your money, your property would be protected. There would be no nationalization, expropriation, or any kind of risk to the property that you can invest. Repatriation is not a problem. Law itself has ensured that the principal, interest, dividend, whatever workers' salaries could be repatriated in a transparent and the most easiest way. And third, we do have a very, I would say, properly managed labor market, whereby our labor law now ensures that there should be no dispute in the industrial relations as the new labor law has been formulated with the tripartite agreement between the employer, employee, and the government. And as you see, there have been no strikes in the last couple of years. That itself manifests that labor market flexibility is there. Those who are laid off, paid off. Their social security provision is mentioned there. And I think that's one of the areas where we can say that we have a strong labor market condition. Not only that, our minimum wages we have settled down, and there should be no debate on the kind of wages, but still wages are low in Nepal. We don't want low wages to be the comparative advantage, but still I would say even after minimum wages, they are comparable in South Asia, or maybe even better. And then some other provisions in the labor market also enable us to create better industrial environment. The infrastructure, which is key to investors. 2 years before, we were talking about power shortage, load shedding and all that. This year, we don't talk much about the power shortage. There are some erratic supplies of power at some point of the day because of the technical error. Otherwise, we can assure quality power supply 24 hours a day. So that's something which we can assure for power-intensive industries. For infrastructure, if you are taking power itself and you need an approach road, if you are doing power itself, generating power and you need a transmission line, and if you need land or forest for the purpose of doing this infrastructure, through the investment board's decision, we have made these things very, very simple. So this is enabling environment. The fourth is the forward-looking legal environment. Foreign Investment and Technology Transfer Act is key to foreign investors, and that has been passed by the cabinet and would be taken to parliament this week. The Intellectual Property Act is drafted, and it would also be taken to the parliament after cabinet approving it. Industrial Enterprise Act is also ready, and the amended Enterprise Act, which also is consistent with the federal setup. The federal, provincial, and local governments being able to manage and regulate industries is clearly defined in the act. And then there are several other acts that includes investment and PPP-related act and public procurement act. I could name many of them, but I should not forget the Company Act, which facilitates everything. So legal and regulatory framework, including the bylaws relating to a hedging mechanism and one window for the operation of industries. I think they are some of the ones that I must mention. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's great that, this Kantipur Conclave, we are actually setting the stage for the future discourse in terms of opening up of investment. And as we mentioned from yesterday, what the Prime Minister said, and hearing what you've been talking about in the reforms. But I think as we go ahead in the Investment Summit, we would actually see some of these tangible stuff coming out and some of the tangible commitments from the government on reforms to say that these are going to happen, not only in terms of the laws and the rules and regulations, but in terms of the implementation part of it also. So I think we really look forward to that. I'll just take a quick digression before we come to the final, sort of question to Minister Gyawali on, you'll be visiting Geneva, and we also hear that, the investments are linked to our own challenges on ending up the transitional justice issue. And as the UN Human Rights Council is going to meet, because this is as we talk to investors, they do try to link these two issues. So what is going to be, how does Nepal try to put a good closure to this soon? So what's your thoughts on that? Yeah.
Thank you, Sujeev. As we are already saying, Nepal is unique. Unique in the sense that it is homegrown, nationally led, and mostly very successful. We have already fulfilled its political aspect, that is the drafting a new constitution and restructuring the state. We have already fulfilled its combatants and arms and ammunition aspect. And now we are in the final leg of transitional justice. Right Honorable Prime Minister K.P. Sharma Oli time and again has cleared the Nepal's position that we will finalize transitional justice in the spirit of comprehensive peace accord. We have various commitments in international level. We will pay proper attention on that regard. There will be no any blanket amnesty on the serious human rights violations. But basically, we will focus on how we can reconcile the society, how we can heal the wounds of the conflict. So that's why it will, I will ask the international community, I will request the international community that please be assured about the Nepal's capability and ability to finalize this process, and it will set an example of the peaceful transition of the conflict. That will the major message I will convey in the Geneva Human Rights Council meeting.
Thank you, Minister Gyawali. So I think it's, time flies. So I think we need to come to our final round. And I think I just thought that, again, looking forward, because our lessons of, again, working in Rwanda has been that we currently are doing the business investment climate study there that feeds into the Davos WEF discussions for 2020 for Rwanda. So if Nepal is going to be at Davos, it should be, next year also 2020 in a bigger way and having side meetings. So what would be some of the, that could be sort of the final comments. What would be the three big things we would be wanting to go and talk about at Davos 2020 next year? What would be those three things? Dr. Khatiwada.
We have to have some more astrology into it, but let me make something predictable. By 2020, we would be saying, Davos, that we would be no more being a landlocked country, least developed country. Landlocked we remain, but least developed we don't have to. We'll be land-linked rather than landlocked. That's what our Prime Minister said in Davos. Why I say so? We would be one of the countries growing very fast, even in the next 2 years' time. As the fastest growing economy, our disposable income would at least cross $1,500 US. We would be having fixed up all the problems associated with investment, and we can say, look, how much infrastructure additionally we have created into the system. What kind of legal, regulatory, and operational hurdles, bottlenecks we have already cleared. How much of foreign investment we have already brought into the country, along with also promoting our domestic investment. And how many jobs we have created in the last 2-3 years' time. And that would be almost the midterm review of the government's tenure also. So by that time, we have also to deliver many of the things. We don't have any excuse then that we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the legal background, we don't have the federal setup been fixed up yet. Then we have to do many of the things before that, and we'll be able to tell the world that we can do development, we can deliver development in a peaceful and more justified manner, and our growth would be job intensive. People would get job along with fair wages. Factors of production, all, including entrepreneurs, would get their fair share of the risk they have taken. So Nepal would be one of the destinations best suited for not only investors, but also for the people visiting Davos to come to Nepal. Not that Davos is the only place to visit in the world. Nepal is not less important or attractive to visit the country. That message we have to give in 2020.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a great set of commitments. Mr. Gyawali, any of your final thoughts you have as we are looking ahead? It's a good, sort of a destination to have, 2020. And we talked about tourism and all. Quite 2-3 things that are coming into your mind.
First of all, I'd like to say that a strong, stable, prosperous Nepal is not only in the favor of Nepali people, but it is also in favor of our neighboring countries and the global community as well. So that's why where we are in the springboard of the rapid economic transformation, we very critically need the broader support and goodwill. Nepal's foreign policy fundamental is amity with all and enmity with none. All countries which have engagements or not with Nepal, they all are friends, and we want a broader development partnership and collaboration with them. We want to learn from them. We want to be a part of them. And second, we are talking about the Nepal in global stage. Unfortunately, the global stage is not very favorable for the countries like Nepal, for the LDCs, for the LLDCs. Existing global order is in jeopardy. Assistance is declining. It is a challenging time. However, we will manage. So it is the right time to support, to encourage countries like Nepal, which just completed the transformation. So that's why we we request the global community, our friends, to be a constructive, meaningful, and substantive partner of development endeavors of Nepal. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you. This is very interesting, and I think we can really look forward to next year, Nepal in 2020, Davos 2020, and I think we'll have the next Kantipur Conclave at the same time. We'll again hear what happened in 2020, and I think perhaps it will be interesting to also have the World Economic Forum Nepal meet in 2020. We should have a World Economic Forum Nepal meet in 2020 so that we bring the world to Nepal as we move into the global stage. Thank you very much to Minister Khatiwada as well as Minister Gyawali for your, sort of taking time off your busy schedule and joining us in these conversations. This has been amazing, again, insight into what is happening, and again, a fresh breath of sort of air in terms of trying to look at Nepal from a new pair of lenses, and again to see how we can unleash its potential. Thank you very much.